A firm I used to proudly say that I worked for and started my career at, Skadden Arps, Slate, Marr, and Flom. Here's my 1992 yearbook. Just settled with the Trump administration before he even issued an executive order against them for $100 million of free services to the Trump administration to basically gut their pro bono and DEI hiring practices. The founders of the firm, Skadden, Marshall Skadden, Les Arps, Mr. Slate, Mr. Marr, and Joe Flom, who I knew, who I met, they are all spinning in their graves. And I'm embarrassed to say that I started my career there as they bent the knee, not even waiting for the executive order. At least Paul Weiss, their competitor down the street, before they agreed to spend $40 million as a bribe or a tribute to Donald Trump, they waited for the executive order. The world is now divided between those in our profession that understand it's a profession, that remember that regardless of whether you're a corporate transactional lawyer, an M&A lawyer like Jeremy London for Skadden Arps, the executive officer there who cut the deal, or you're a litigator and trial lawyer, we took an oath. You are sworn in, regardless of your practice area, to uphold the Constitution. Right? To be an officer of the court, even if you never see a courtroom other than in a movie or a television. That is the difference. That makes us a profession. If you didn't know that or you don't care about that, then you should have went to MBA school and become a MBA graduate and go on Wall Street. But if you were choosing to be a lawyer, even if you haven't looked at the rules of professional responsibility or conduct since you graduated, you are bound by them. You have a bar license. You have a commitment to our constitutional republic that gives you your job and your fees. And what you're not allowed to do and what you're not supposed to do is to sacrifice on the altar of your profits per partner, right? Your ethics and your role in protecting against abuse of power in the executive branch. The world is now divided as I started. It's between those law firms that are fighting, mainly those led by litigators, proudly. Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, Jenner and Block, who have all sued, some of which have obtained temporary restraining orders already against Trump's attack on them, trying to blacklist them and their clients, trying to attack their pro bono programs where they give back to society through their younger lawyers and represent people who don't have enough money to be represented, like the Ruby Freemans and Shay Mosses of the world, who sued successfully Rudy Giuliani for $150 million in defamation, led by another firm that I won't even mention now, another big New York firm. That's one part of the world. The other world is the firms that are bending the knee. Paul Weiss, top 15 in the American Lawyer. Skadden Arps, top 2 in the American Lawyer rankings, between $3 and $5 billion a year, $billion a year in revenue. They were supposed to be the leaders, the shining lights. Now they've just set the bar higher for Donald Trump, who tastes blood and the ability to work a settlement. I'm Michael Popok, formerly of Skadden Arps, and I'm here to talk about it on Legal AF. This is a personal story to me. I thought long and hard about how I would approach this. I've been following all along the stories about the executive branch going after at least 14 firms on some secret list, and starting with Perkins Coie, then Jenner and Block, then Wilmer Hale, all because they represented either Democrats or Democratic interest, or Robert Mueller worked there, or Jack Smith was represented by them. I'll talk about Skadden Arps in particular in a minute and how we got there. So we know that's been going on as he attacks the judiciary, the judges, the Supreme Court judges, the federal court judges. I mean, I know Jeremy London hasn't been inside of a courtroom, but it's okay with him that Jeb Boasberg, one of the most accomplished and one of the most respected federal judges, is being called an insane, lunatic, leftist activist judge by Donald Trump, by Pam Bondi. I mean, it is a special stew, a disgusting stew to watch Donald Trump during his Alina Habba, who is obscenely unqualified to be a federal practitioner of any sort, now the acting U.S. attorney from my home state of New Jersey, and at the press conference also announced a settlement with Skadden Arps. Just to show the proof here, besides my Facebook, for those that are interested. There, where am I? There's Michael Popok, circa 1990, 1991, right? New York office, litigation, Skadden Arps. I'm going back and forth with people who are alum and friends of mine, various leadership positions and other positions, and it runs the gamut. We're disgusted. Now, the fall from grace for Skadden Arps has been going on for quite some time, unfortunately. I thought I saw the worst of it in 2019 and 2020 with two public settlements that they had to reach. One with the Department of Justice under Trump. See, that's where Trump got the taste for this. In 2019, when Trump was still in office, his Department of Justice entered into a settlement agreement related to Greg Craig, formerly the Obama White House counsel working for Skadden Arps, about their representation of Paul Manafort in some pro-Russia, anti-Ukrainian business, some nasty business through Paul Manafort. And they settled for almost $5 million in a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice under Donald Trump. See, he'd been on their radar for a while. But that's not the only Ukrainian disaster for the administration that embarrassed me and others who count Skadden as a part of their alumni network and proudly said they worked there. They also got on the wrong side of going after and basically imprisoning in Ukraine, back to Ukraine, the prime minister at the time, Tymoshenko. She spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, mainly because of the work of Manafort and Skadden. And when she got out, she went after those that had aligned themselves with Yanukovych, who was the pro-Russian president of Ukraine before Zelensky. And Skadden had to settle with her, basically because she was imprisoned and had her civil rights violated through their work. And they settled with her for $11 million. So Skadden has, look, I met, as everybody in my generation did, I was fortunate enough to meet with Joe Flom, who was the first associate formed when Skadden Arps was formed on April Fool's Day, 1948. I know that like I know my social security number because it was so ingrained in me in the training and how they formed the name Skadden Arps Slate, right? Mar, right? Because by seniority, Les Arps should have been the first name in the title, but they didn't want their initials to be Ass. That little side note. So Marshall Skadden ended up getting the top billing, and the firm is now known as Skadden or Skadden Arps. And when you work there, you also learn how to pronounce Mar's last name, which looks like meager, but it's pronounced Mar. But you get to meet Joe Flom if you're lucky enough. And he came and he gave a speech as a first year at a lunch for the litigators. He talked about litigation. We saw him in the hallways. I was in the elevator with him. I made small talk with him. I understood the DNA of the firm through Joe Flom, who was a small man in stature, but huge in influence and impact on things like mergers and acquisition and transactions. Right? In fact, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a chapter of a book in his book called Outlier that had basically an entire profile of two titans of mergers and acquisition law in New York, Marty Lipton of Wachtell Lipton and Joe Flom of Skadden Arps. So it means something to people from my era, from the early 90s, about what Skadden stood for. That's over. I have said it, and I will say it again. Skadden Arps, Slate, Mar, and Flom are rolling in their graves about what Jeremy London has done on the executive committee, along with everybody else there. And now they have raised the stakes. It's like a kidnapping, You don't cooperate with kidnappers, and you don't pay the ransom. You pay the $5 million ransom now. Your next kid or grandmother is going to get kidnapped, and now the number has gone up to 50 million. And that's just what happened. Donald Trump got $40 million. I would love to have been in the negotiations there. Where did it start? They wanted $1 billion. You got him down to $40 million. How about $5 million? How about no million? How about fight? How about get your paws off my pro bono program, which is the way that we give back to our society. Now, Donald Trump has got in, put his hand up their asses and told them who they can and can't represent. And worse, you got to represent me and my interests. And you know what his interests are? Anti-diversity, anti-equity, anti-inclusion, anti-black, anti-brown, and anti-women. And so what's going to happen now? Besides the hiring practices that have been shot to shit, Skadden is now going to be filing briefs and amicus briefs to support the Trump administration's position about women's rights to choose, about abortion, about civil rights, about people being kidnapped and deported pursuant to the Alien Enemies Act. Am I going to now see Skadden Arps and Paul Weiss briefs about that? I mean, I know that Musk sent out a little bit of a signal because the Skadden people on pro bono were going after Dinesh D'Souza and his phony 2000 Mules documentary, and Musk, who had used Skadden and Skadden had represented Musk in corporate transactional matters and been paid millions and millions of dollars. You know, he got on the wrong side a couple of days ago, so it was like weird. All of a sudden, Skadden is getting roasted by Musk in his social media. I'm like, and then 2 days later at the Alina Habba, that's how quick it went. What from there, the phone call got picked up? And Jeremy, you should read, since I'm never going to talk to you, you should read the history of Skadden Arps. And you should learn about Peter Mullen, who was the first executive managing person at Skadden, non-lawyer, who ran that firm. And you should ask yourself, would they have done that? Now, he wrote in an email to the internal email that got leaked to Politico the following BS and blather. This agreement does not change who we are. I have news for you. It does. Essentially, existentially, and the rest. You just sacrificed your DEI program, your pro bono program, and everything that made Skadden a great firm because you're worried about going out of business. I mean, that was the rumor about, not the rumor, but the insider analysis about Paul Weiss, that they did not feel they could compete and they would have to maybe close because so many clients would say, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I can use another firm. I don't need one that's blacklisted by Donald Trump right now, especially if you want to do business with the Trump administration. Or you don't want to have your business investigated, regulated, prosecuted by the Trump administration for this next 3 years. Why bother? We'll just take a pass on Paul Weiss. And they're sort of a tweener firm, right? They're big, $3 billion in revenue, but they're not so big that if half their client base leaves, they would be happy with that. Skadden probably feels the same way. Look, I'm all about keeping your doors open, but don't sacrifice your morals, your ethics, and your role in society to do it. I'll continue to follow. What happens next? Applaud firms like Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, Jenner & Block, and a special shout out to Cooley, a firm that I know well. I've hired Cooley for various things when I was in-house counsel somewhere. Cooley is representing Jenner & Block, Jenner & Block in the new suit that was just filed. So, you got to get law firms to stand up for law firms. Cooley, again, more of a litigation firm, but they're putting their reputation at risk. They have clients that are in federal court and have federal agencies on the other side of them. They have a big white collar practice, but they made a principled decision. As I'll end it this way, Judge Coffenor, federal judge, senior judge in San Francisco, who now has the historical kudos of being the first judge to issue the first temporary restraining order against Donald Trump 5 days after the start of the administration in the birthright citizenship case. He said in his decision that he could not live with himself. He did not want history to look back on this period and say, where were the judges and where were the lawyers? And by extension, where was Skadden Arps? This is now a black mark in history in the chapter written. I go on the website today to check it out. I don't see a darn thing. I don't even see an executive management posting to the world. Nothing. Crickets. Just routine business today at Skadden Arps. No, the world has changed. Don't continue to follow it right here on Legal AF. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.